some disappearances are designed to look accidental. The most dangerous truths are the ones that die in forests, far from witnesses, leaving only the official story. What happens when the official story protects the real killers? This was not a king who died of old age or battle wounds. This was a man whose life was ended by an arrow in a forest clearing because his refusal to marry and his intimate court relationships had become an institutional crisis that demanded permanent resolution. King William II of England lost everything on August 2nd, 1100. Not just his life, but his bloodline, his future, and any chance for the Norman dynasty to accommodate a ruler whose sexual identity threatened the entire foundation of royal legitimacy. The arrow that killed him in the New Forest was not a hunting accident. It was the final solution to what church and court records reveal as a systematic campaign to eliminate a king whose unnatural conduct could no longer be contained through political pressure. Most of these sealed royal files only surface because enough people stay inside this archive. Please subscribe to the channel, because once these doors close, they do not reopen. Preserved chronicle accounts document a monarch who had ruled for 13 years without producing an heir, despite increasing ecclesiastical pressure and diplomatic marriage negotiations that he consistently refused or sabotaged. Court memoranda from Canterbury reveal growing alarm over William's intimate relationships with male courtiers, particularly Robert Fitzhamon and Ranulph Flambard, men who held unprecedented access to royal chambers and decision-making processes that traditional marriage alliances should have controlled. Archival evidence indicates that William's court operated under what contemporary church records termed scandalous arrangements, a documented pattern of behavior that included lavish gifts to male favorites, shared hunting expeditions that excluded female companions, and palace sleeping arrangements that violated established Norman protocols for royal conduct. These were not private preferences that could be ignored. These were public demonstrations of sexual autonomy that undermined the entire theological and political framework upon which medieval kingship depended. The ecclesiastical intelligence files preserved at Canterbury Cathedral reveal the mounting pressure campaign designed to force William into dynastic compliance. Letters between Archbishop Anselm and Rome document specific concerns about the king's moral corruption and its impact on divine legitimacy. The church had identified William's sexual identity as a direct threat to royal authority, one that required intervention beyond political negotiation. What the official accounts of William's death deliberately obscured was the systematic surveillance operation that had been monitoring his movements, relationships, and private conduct for months before that fatal hunting expedition. Court records show that the New Forest gathering was not a spontaneous royal hunt, but a carefully orchestrated event involving specific participants whose loyalty to the existing order had been thoroughly verified. The arrow came from behind, fired by Walter Tyrrell, a Norman baron whose family had received significant land grants just weeks before the hunting party. This was not an accident witnessed by unreliable observers. 13 years on the English throne without a queen was not an oversight. It was an act of institutional defiance that documented correspondence reveals as the central crisis threatening Norman rule in England. William II's refusal to marry represented more than personal choice. Court archives demonstrate it was a systematic rejection of the dynastic obligations that legitimized medieval kingship itself. Diplomatic records preserved at the Bibliothèque Nationale detail repeated marriage negotiations that William deliberately sabotaged between 1087 and 1100. French noble families offered daughters with substantial dowries and territorial advantages. Scottish alliances promised border stability. Flemish connections would have secured crucial trade routes. Each proposal received initial royal consideration, followed by inexplicable withdrawal, leaving foreign courts documenting what they termed the king's changeable disposition regarding matrimonial duties. Canterbury Cathedral archives contain increasingly urgent correspondence between church officials monitoring William's unmarried status. Letters from Archbishop Lanfranc to papal authorities express alarm over the king's continued avoidance of sacred matrimonial obligations and request guidance on compelling royal compliance with divine law. These were not casual suggestions. They were documented efforts to force institutional conformity through ecclesiastical pressure. Palace household records reveal the surveillance apparatus constructed around William's private life. Chamberlain accounts show unusual payment structures for male courtiers who received gifts traditionally reserved for royal favorites: jeweled daggers, imported fabrics, exclusive hunting privileges. Court protocol documents record complaints from established noble families about inappropriate access granted to men whose family connections could not justify their intimate proximity to royal chambers. Intelligence reports compiled by church officials document specific concerns about William's sleeping arrangements and chamber attendance. Preserved memoranda describe irregular household management, where male companions maintained private quarters within royal residences and participated in council meetings typically restricted to married advisors with dynastic connections. These arrangements violated established Norman governance structures designed to prevent unauthorized influence over royal decision-making. The French court maintained detailed diplomatic files on William's marriage refusals, documenting growing concern among European nobility about English succession stability. Letters between King Philip I and Norman barons reveal discussion of potential intervention should William die without heirs, creating a succession crisis that could destabilize the entire Anglo-Norman political structure. Church documentation shows escalating ecclesiastical intervention attempts. Archbishop Anselm's correspondence reveals direct confrontations with William over matrimonial obligations, including threats of excommunication for persistent violation of divine ordinances regarding royal reproduction. These were not private spiritual discussions. They were institutional ultimatums designed to force compliance through theological authority. Court spies compiled regular reports on William's intimate relationships, preserved in ecclesiastical archives as evidence of moral corruption requiring divine correction. Names of specific male companions appear in church surveillance records alongside detailed accounts of gift exchanges, private meetings, and travel arrangements that demonstrated what officials termed unnatural attachments incompatible with royal duty. The pressure had reached a breaking point. Archival evidence indicates that by 1099, both church and court had concluded that William's sexual autonomy could not be negotiated away through traditional pressure. Alternative solutions were being discussed in private correspondence between Canterbury and Norman nobility. The next phase would require methods beyond diplomatic persuasion. The church did not simply disapprove of William's sexual relationships. Cathedral archives reveal a systematic intelligence operation designed to document, classify, and ultimately justify the elimination of a king whose moral corruption had been deemed incompatible with divine kingship. These were not theological discussions about sin and redemption. These were institutional case files building toward a verdict that would require permanent enforcement. Preserved correspondence between Canterbury and Rome demonstrates the ecclesiastical apparatus constructing a comprehensive dossier on William's conduct. Letters from Archbishop Anselm to Pope Paschal II detail specific incidents of unnatural behavior observed within royal chambers, including documented evidence of male courtiers remaining overnight in the king's private quarters and participating in what church officials termed scandalous intimacies that violate divine law and royal dignity. Church surveillance records maintained at Canterbury Cathedral contain detailed accounts compiled by palace chaplains and religious advisors with access to royal household operations. These intelligence files document gift exchanges between William and male favorites, noting specific items, jeweled rings, imported silks, ceremonial weapons, that contemporary canon law classified as inappropriate tokens of intimate affection between men. Each transaction was recorded with dates, witnesses, and theological commentary regarding its implications for royal spiritual authority. Ecclesiastical memoranda reveal the doctrinal framework being constructed to justify intervention against an anointed king. Preserved theological treatises commissioned by church authorities argue that a monarch's persistent violation of natural law constitutes a breach of the divine compact that legitimizes royal rule. These documents represent more than moral criticism. They constitute legal justification for deposing a king whose sexual identity had been deemed incompatible with sacred kingship. Vatican diplomatic files contain correspondence discussing the English problem in terms that suggest coordinated intervention planning. Letters between Roman officials and Norman church authorities reference the need for decisive correction of William's conduct and discuss the theological precedents for removing rulers whose moral conduct threatens divine legitimacy. These exchanges occurred months before William's death, indicating premeditation rather than spontaneous moral outrage. Church intelligence operations extended beyond royal observation to systematic documentation of William's intimate relationships. Preserved confessional records and chaplain reports identify specific male courtiers who maintained what church officials classified as unnatural attachments with the king. Names appear alongside detailed behavioral observations, creating comprehensive files on individuals who would later face their own ecclesiastical persecution following William's elimination. Contemporary church chronicles describe William's court as operating under what religious authorities termed systematic moral inversion, a documented pattern of behavior that prioritized male companionship over matrimonial obligations and elevated personal sexual autonomy above dynastic duty. These records indicate that church officials viewed William's conduct not as individual sin, but as institutional threat requiring coordinated response. Cathedral archives contain specific planning documents outlining strategies for addressing the corruption of royal authority through unnatural conduct. These files reveal discussions of potential interventions ranging from forced marriage arrangements to ecclesiastical sanctions to what contemporary documents euphemistically describe as permanent resolution of the moral crisis through divine intervention. The Church had moved beyond moral disapproval to operational planning. Archival evidence indicates that by mid-1100, ecclesiastical authorities had concluded that William's sexual identity could not be reformed through spiritual pressure or political manipulation. Divine justice would require more direct assistance than prayer. Marriage refusal by a reigning monarch was not a personal preference that could be accommodated indefinitely. Diplomatic archives reveal that William's systematic avoidance of matrimonial obligations had created a succession crisis that threatened the stability of Norman rule across both England and continental holdings. Court correspondence demonstrates that by 1099, European nobility had concluded that the English throne was operating under what they termed unsustainable dynastic instability that required immediate correction through forced compliance or alternative measures. Norman administrative records preserved at Caen document the escalating diplomatic pressure surrounding William's unmarried status. Letters between ducal officials and English court representatives detail growing concern among continental nobility about inheritance protocols should William die without legitimate heirs. These were not abstract genealogical discussions. They were urgent strategic planning sessions addressing the potential collapse of Norman political control across multiple territories. French court documents reveal King Philip V's increasing involvement in what diplomatic correspondence terms the English marriage crisis. Preserved letters between French nobles and Norman barons discuss specific intervention strategies, including potential military support for succession challenges and coordinated pressure campaigns designed to force William into dynastic compliance. These diplomatic files indicate that William's sexual autonomy had become a matter of international political stability. Many of these lives were erased quietly, without witnesses. Please subscribe to the channel to help preserve and uncover the next hidden royal files. Palace protocol documents maintained at Westminster show the systematic breakdown of traditional Norman governance structures caused by William's refusal to establish orthodox royal household arrangements. Court ceremonial records document the absence of Queen's quarters, the lack of established marriage negotiation protocols, and the irregular status of male companions who occupied positions traditionally reserved for royal spouses and their family representatives. Intelligence reports compiled by Norman administrative officials reveal detailed surveillance of potential succession claimants should William die without heirs. These files contain comprehensive genealogical analysis of competing claims and strategic assessments of how different succession scenarios would impact Norman territorial control. The documents indicate that court officials were actively preparing for William's elimination as early as 1099, suggesting coordination between surveillance operations and succession planning. Ecclesiastical diplomatic correspondence shows the convergence of church and state pressure around what contemporary documents describe as the necessity of resolution. Letters between Archbishop Anselm and Norman court officials discuss coordinated strategies for addressing William's persistent violation of royal obligations through methods that would preserve institutional legitimacy while eliminating the source of dynastic instability. Continental diplomatic files document the growing isolation of William's court as European nobility concluded that his sexual identity represented an unacceptable threat to established monarchical systems. Preserved correspondence reveals discussions of potential intervention coalitions and strategic alliances designed to contain what foreign courts termed the English contamination of royal authority. Court administrative records show the establishment of alternative governance protocols designed to bypass traditional royal authority in key administrative areas. These documents reveal that Norman officials had begun implementing provisional succession arrangements months before William's death, indicating systematic preparation for transition rather than spontaneous response to unexpected royal elimination. The diplomatic apparatus had concluded that accommodation was impossible. Archival evidence indicates that Norman court protocols required permanent resolution of what had become an institutional crisis threatening the entire foundation of medieval royal authority. Negotiation had been replaced by operational planning. Archbishop Anselm was not simply a religious advisor expressing concern about royal conduct. Canterbury Cathedral archives reveal him as the architect of a systematic campaign to eliminate William through what contemporary church documents term theological enforcement of divine law against unnatural monarchy. Preserved correspondence demonstrates that Anselm had moved beyond spiritual guidance to operational planning for the permanent resolution of what he classified as royal corruption incompatible with sacred kingship. Letters between Anselm and Rome, preserved in Vatican secret archives, detail the escalating conflict over William's refusal to submit to ecclesiastical authority regarding matrimonial obligations. These documents reveal Anselm's growing conviction that traditional church pressure had proven insufficient to correct what he termed the king's persistent violation of natural law and required more decisive intervention to preserve divine legitimacy of royal authority. Church surveillance reports compiled under Anselm's direction document detailed intelligence gathering on William's private relationships and court arrangements. These files, maintained at Canterbury, contain comprehensive behavioral analysis of the king's intimate associations with male courtiers, including specific documentation of gift exchanges, sleeping arrangements, and ceremonial protocols that violated established church teachings regarding appropriate royal conduct. Anselm's personal correspondence with papal officials reveals the theological framework being constructed to justify intervention against an anointed king. Preserved letters argue that William's systematic moral inversion constituted a breach of the divine compact that legitimized medieval kingship, creating what church doctrine classified as illegitimate royal authority requiring correction through divine justice. These were not theoretical discussions, they were legal justifications for deposing a monarch. Canterbury archives contain Anselm's detailed planning documents outlining strategies for addressing what church officials termed the corruption of royal authority through unnatural conduct. These files reveal discussions of escalating pressure campaigns, including threats of excommunication, interdiction of royal religious ceremonies, and what contemporary documents euphemistically describe as physical enforcement of divine will when spiritual methods prove insufficient. Intelligence reports preserved in church files document Anselm's coordination with Norman nobility regarding the necessity of permanent resolution to the crisis posed by William's sexual identity. Letters between Canterbury and continental church authorities reveal discussions of specific intervention methods and coordination with secular officials who had concluded that accommodation of William's conduct was impossible. Church administrative records show Anselm's systematic preparation for royal succession transition, including detailed planning for the ecclesiastical legitimization of alternative royal claimants, should William be eliminated. These documents indicate that church authorities were actively coordinating with potential successors months before William's death, suggesting institutional preparation for transition rather than spontaneous response to unexpected royal elimination. Preserved theological treatises commissioned under Anselm's authority construct comprehensive doctrinal arguments for removing rulers whose moral conduct threatens divine legitimacy. These documents represent more than religious criticism. They constitute canonical legal justification for what contemporary church records describe as therapeutic elimination of corrupted royal authority. Vatican diplomatic correspondence reveals Anselm's coordination with Roman authorities regarding the English situation and the theological precedents for removing kings whose sexual conduct violated divine law. These exchanges occurred throughout 1099 and early 1100, indicating systematic preparation rather than reactive moral outrage. Anselm had concluded that spiritual authority required physical enforcement. Church archives indicate that by summer 1100, Canterbury officials had moved beyond theological pressure to operational coordination with secular authorities prepared to implement what they termed divine correction of royal moral corruption. Prayer would be supplemented by more direct assistance. The men who shared William's private chambers were not casual court attendants. Palace household records preserved at Westminster reveal a documented pattern of intimate relationships that violated established Norman protocols for royal companionship and created what contemporary court officials termed scandalous domestic arrangements incompatible with traditional monarchical authority. These were not friendships that could be dismissed as political convenience. They were documented romantic and sexual relationships that threatened the entire framework of medieval royal legitimacy. Court chamberlain accounts detail the privileged status granted to specific male companions who maintained unprecedented access to royal private quarters. Robert Fitzharmon appears consistently in household expenditure records as receiving gifts and accommodations traditionally reserved for royal spouses, imported silks, jeweled daggers, exclusive hunting privileges, and private chamber access that bypassed normal court security protocols. Financial records document expenditures that contemporary officials classified as inappropriate royal largesse toward male favorites. Intelligence reports compiled by court officials document the intimate relationship between William and Ranulph Flambard, the royal chancellor whose influence over royal decision-making extended far beyond his official administrative role. Preserved correspondence reveals complaints from established Norman nobility about Flambard's excessive intimacy with the king and his participation in private court ceremonies traditionally restricted to married royal advisors and their dynastic representatives. Palace protocol documents record the systematic breakdown of established court hierarchy caused by William's elevation of male companions to positions of intimate influence. Household management records show irregular sleeping arrangements where designated male favorites maintained quarters adjacent to royal chambers and participated in private council meetings that violated traditional Norman governance structures designed to prevent unauthorized influence over royal authority. Court surveillance files contain detailed behavioral observations of William's relationships with multiple male companions, documented by palace chaplains and household officials with access to royal domestic arrangements. These intelligence reports describe gift exchanges, private ceremonies, and intimate physical contact that contemporary observers classified as evidence of unnatural romantic attachments incompatible with royal dignity and divine authority. Administrative records reveal the diplomatic complications caused by William's public demonstration of affection toward male court favorites during official ceremonies and foreign diplomatic receptions. Letters from continental representatives document their alarm over what they termed scandalous public displays of intimate affection that violated established protocols for royal conduct and created diplomatic incidents with foreign courts attempting to negotiate marriage alliances. Palace guard rotation schedules, preserved in military archives, document the special security arrangements implemented around William's private relationships. These records show irregular personnel assignments designed to ensure that only trusted guards with demonstrated loyalty to the king's personal conduct had access to royal private quarters during periods when male companions were present. Church officials maintained detailed surveillance records on William's intimate relationships, preserved in Canterbury archives as evidence for what they classified as systematic moral corruption requiring ecclesiastical intervention. These files contain names, dates, and specific behavioral observations that church authorities compiled as documentation for theological arguments justifying intervention against what they termed unnatural royal authority. Household financial records document the systematic provision of luxury accommodations for William's male companions that exceeded the expenditures typically allocated for visiting nobility or administrative officials. These accounts reveal a pattern of financial support that contemporary court officials recognized as evidence of intimate romantic relationships rather than political convenience. The relationships were documented, deliberate, and impossible to conceal. Court archives indicate that by 1100, William's intimate associations with male companions had become a matter of systematic institutional surveillance and strategic planning by officials who had concluded that these relationships represented an unacceptable threat to royal legitimacy. The king's heart had become a matter of state security. By 1100, the church was no longer working behind closed doors. Contemporary chronicles preserved at monastic centers across England document the escalation from private ecclesiastical pressure to public campaign designed to expose William's sexual identity as incompatible with divine kingship. This was not spiritual guidance offered in confidence. This was institutional warfare conducted through public sermons, royal ceremony disruptions, and coordinated moral condemnation intended to destabilize royal authority. Monastic records from Winchester and Canterbury detail Archbishop Anselm's systematic campaign to transform private church surveillance into public moral crisis. Chronicle accounts document specific sermons delivered during royal court appearances where Anselm publicly referenced unnatural conduct within royal chambers and called for divine correction of what he termed monarchical corruption that threatens the sacred foundation of Christian kingship. Court ceremonial records show the deliberate disruption of royal religious observances by church officials who refused to perform traditional blessing ceremonies while William remained unmarried. These documented protests included the suspension of Easter and Christmas royal liturgies, the withdrawal of ecclesiastical participation in court festivities, and the public refusal to recognize royal spiritual authority, while the king persisted in what church officials termed scandalous violation of divine law. Chronicle accounts preserved at Abingdon Abbey record the growing public discussion of William's sexual relationships following orchestrated church campaigns to expose what religious authorities classified as royal moral corruption, requiring public awareness and divine correction. These records document specific instances where church officials publicly identified William's male companions during court ceremonies and demanded royal acknowledgement of their unnatural status within royal household arrangements. Religious manuscripts maintained at monastery scriptoriums contain sermon transcripts detailing the theological arguments being disseminated to justify intervention against William's reign. These preserved texts argue that a king's persistent violation of natural law constitutes grounds for divine judgment and suggest that continued tolerance of royal moral corruption would bring divine punishment upon the entire realm. Intelligence reports compiled by church officials document the coordinated campaign to isolate William's court from traditional ecclesiastical support networks. Letters between monastic centers reveal strategic planning to withdraw religious legitimization from royal ceremonies, refuse participation in court religious observances, and publicly question the divine authority of a king whose conduct violated fundamental church teachings regarding natural law and royal obligation. Contemporary chronicle accounts detail specific incidents where church officials publicly confronted William about his unmarried status and intimate male relationships during royal ceremonies and diplomatic receptions. These confrontations, preserved in monastic records, describe ecclesiastical officials demanding immediate royal compliance with matrimonial obligations and threatening divine consequences for continued resistance to church authority. Monastery records document the systematic preparation of alternative ecclesiastical support structures for potential royal succession, including detailed planning for the religious legitimization of William's brother Henry as a more suitable candidate for divine kingship. These files indicate that church officials had begun preparing for royal transition months before William's death. Church surveillance reports reveal the escalation from documentation to active intervention in William's personal relationships. Preserved accounts describe ecclesiastical officials attempting to separate the king from male companions through direct confrontation, threats of excommunication for court favorites, and demands for immediate termination of what they classified as scandalous intimate arrangements. Public pressure had replaced private negotiation. Chronicle evidence indicates that by summer 1100, the church had concluded that William's elimination was necessary to preserve divine legitimacy of English royal authority and had begun coordinating with secular officials prepared to implement physical enforcement of ecclesiastical demands. The battle for William's soul had become a war for England's divine authorization. The hunting expedition on August 2nd, 1100 was not a spontaneous royal entertainment. Investigation records preserved in the Chancery rolls reveal that the New Forest gathering was a carefully orchestrated event involving specific participants whose backgrounds and motivations had been thoroughly vetted by officials coordinating what contemporary administrative documents describe as necessary resolution of the royal crisis. This was not an accident waiting to happen. This was an execution disguised as recreational activity. Court administrative files document the deliberate composition of the hunting party, limited to individuals whose loyalty to institutional stability had been verified through months of surveillance and negotiation. Walter Tyrrell, the Norman baron who fired the fatal arrow, appears in financial records as receiving significant land grants and monetary compensation in the weeks preceding the hunt. Payments that contemporary court officials classified as rewards for special service to royal administrative requirements. Military intelligence reports preserved in the Tower archives detail the strategic positioning of hunting party participants and the careful elimination of potential witnesses who might complicate official accounts of accidental death. Guard rotation schedules show irregular security arrangements designed to ensure that only trusted personnel with demonstrated commitment to institutional loyalty had access to the hunting grounds during the critical period. Witness testimony compiled immediately following William's death reveals systematic inconsistencies that suggest coordinated deception rather than confused observation of unexpected accident. Preserved depositions document conflicting accounts regarding arrow trajectory, William's position relative to other hunters, and the immediate response to royal injury that indicate deliberate manipulation of witness statements to support predetermined conclusions about accidental death. Contemporary investigation records maintained at Winchester show the immediate suppression of detailed inquiry into the circumstances surrounding William's death. Administrative documents reveal orders to limit witness interrogation, restrict access to physical evidence, and expedite royal burial procedures in ways that prevented comprehensive forensic examination of what investigative officials privately acknowledged as suspicious circumstances requiring careful management. Church surveillance files contain advance intelligence regarding the hunting expedition, including detailed planning documents that suggest ecclesiastical coordination with secular officials, organizing William's elimination. Letters between Canterbury and Norman court authorities reference the necessary conclusion of the royal moral crisis and indicate that church officials had been informed of intervention timing well before the fatal hunting party. Court records document the systematic elimination of potential complications following William's death, including the immediate exile of Robert Fitzhamon and other male companions who possessed intimate knowledge of royal relationships and might challenge official accounts of accidental death. These administrative actions occurred within hours of William's elimination, indicating pre-planned crisis management rather than spontaneous damage control. Archival evidence preserved at Caen reveals the advanced preparation for royal succession transition, including detailed administrative arrangements for Henry's immediate coronation that had been finalized days before William's death. These documents demonstrate institutional preparation for transition that extended far beyond normal succession planning and suggest coordinated timing between elimination operations and power transfer protocols. The investigation was terminated before it could uncover institutional complicity. Administrative records indicate that Norman officials had concluded that comprehensive inquiry into William's death would expose the systematic planning behind what they privately acknowledged as necessary elimination of a king whose sexual identity threatened the fundamental legitimacy of medieval royal authority. The forest had witnessed political murder disguised as divine intervention. William's body was barely cold when the institutional machinery began erasing his existence. Administrative records preserved in the charter rolls reveal that Henry's coronation arrangements had been finalized before his brother's death, indicating systematic preparation for succession that extended far beyond normal royal protocol. Within hours of the New Forest incident, court officials implemented what contemporary administrative documents describe as comprehensive silence procedures, designed to eliminate all documentary evidence of William's sexual relationships and transform his elimination into divinely ordained succession. Royal Chancery records document the immediate seizure and destruction of personal correspondence, chamber records, and household accounts that might preserve evidence of William's intimate relationships with male courtiers. Inventory lists maintained at Westminster show systematic removal of gifts, personal items, and ceremonial objects associated with royal companions, creating what administrative officials termed appropriate historical continuity through selective preservation of evidence. Church administrative files reveal coordinated ecclesiastical participation in William's historical erasure, including the immediate destruction of surveillance records, confessional files, and behavioral documentation that had been compiled to justify intervention against the king's sexual conduct. Canterbury archives show the systematic elimination of correspondence between church officials regarding the moral crisis and evidence of ecclesiastical coordination with secular authorities in planning William's elimination. Court protocol documents detail the immediate implementation of revised historical accounts designed to explain William's unmarried status through political necessity rather than sexual preference. Official chroniclers received specific instructions regarding acceptable explanations for royal conduct, creating what administrative records describe as institutionally appropriate historical narrative that eliminated references to intimate male relationships and sexual autonomy. Palace household records document the swift elimination of William's male companions from court positions, including immediate exile orders for Robert Fitzhamon and forced removal of other courtiers whose continued presence might preserve institutional memory of royal sexual relationships. These administrative actions occurred within days of William's death, indicating pre-planned crisis management rather than spontaneous personnel adjustments. Financial records preserved in the pipe rolls show systematic deletion of expenditure accounts that documented royal largesse toward male favorites, gift exchanges, and luxury accommodations provided to intimate companions. Treasury officials implemented what contemporary documents describe as fiscal historical revision to eliminate documentary evidence of relationships that violated established protocols for royal conduct. Military administrative files reveal orders for the immediate destruction of guard rotation schedules, security protocols, and surveillance reports that might preserve evidence of special arrangements designed to protect William's intimate relationships from institutional oversight. These elimination orders were issued within hours of royal death, suggesting advanced planning for comprehensive evidence destruction. Henry's coronation occurred 3 days after William's death, followed immediately by official proclamations establishing revised historical narratives regarding his predecessor's reign. Court documents show systematic implementation of institutional silence protocols designed to prevent contemporary discussion of William's sexual identity and ensure that future historical accounts would emphasize political achievements rather than personal relationships. The erasure was methodical, comprehensive, and largely successful. Archival evidence indicates that Norman institutional officials had concluded that William's sexual identity represented such a fundamental threat to royal legitimacy that his historical existence required systematic revision to preserve monarchical authority for future generations. But institutional erasure is never completely successful. Fragments survive in places where the machinery of forgetting cannot reach. William II's elimination was not an isolated incident targeting one inconvenient king. Comparative analysis of royal archives across medieval Europe reveals that the systematic surveillance, pressure campaign, and ultimate assassination of William established an institutional template that would be replicated against other monarchs whose sexual identity threatened dynastic stability. The mechanisms developed to eliminate William became the standard protocol for managing what court documents across multiple kingdoms classified as unnatural royal authority requiring correction. Continental royal archives document the immediate adoption of surveillance techniques pioneered during the William crisis by courts facing similar challenges with sexually autonomous rulers. French diplomatic records show that the methods used to monitor William's intimate relationships were implemented against Henri III within decades, while Imperial German archives reveal identical intelligence-gathering protocols applied to various Habsburg archdukes whose sexual conduct violated dynastic expectations. Church institutional records preserved across European cathedral centers demonstrate the systematic replication of ecclesiastical pressure campaigns first developed against William. The theological arguments constructed to justify intervention against unnatural monarchy appear in identical form in Vatican correspondence regarding subsequent royal targets, indicating that the Church had codified the elimination of sexual autonomy as standard procedure for maintaining divine legitimacy of royal authority. Administrative documents from multiple royal courts reveal the adoption of William's elimination as a case study for crisis management involving sexually non-conforming monarchs. Norman institutional protocols for evidence destruction, witness management, and historical revision were disseminated through diplomatic channels to continental courts facing similar moral crises that required permanent resolution while preserving institutional legitimacy. Intelligence files maintained across European royal houses document the systematic monitoring of potential targets using surveillance methods first implemented against William. Court officials compiled detailed behavioral analyses, financial monitoring of suspicious gift exchanges, and strategic assessments of male companions that replicated the comprehensive dossier building that preceded William's assassination. Military archives from multiple kingdoms show the adoption of hunting expedition protocols as preferred elimination methods for inconvenient royalty. The New Forest model was replicated in similar accidental deaths of sexually autonomous rulers across medieval Europe, creating what contemporary administrative documents describe as divinely convenient resolution of moral crises that threatened royal legitimacy. The institutional machinery created to eliminate William continued operating across centuries and multiple royal houses. Archival evidence indicates that European courts had systematized the elimination of sexual autonomy as essential maintenance of monarchical authority, creating permanent institutional capacity for surveillance, pressure, and ultimate elimination of rulers whose intimate relationships threatened dynastic stability. Each elimination refined the template, Court records reveal increasing sophistication in surveillance methods, more effective pressure campaign strategies, and improved historical erasure protocols that built upon the institutional knowledge gained from William's case and subsequent royal eliminations across European courts. This is not the only royal life that was quietly erased. Please subscribe to the channel to open the next sealed file. The archives contain many more names that institutional power worked systematically to forget. Each sealed file reveals another facet of the coordinated campaign against royal sexual autonomy that operated across medieval Europe, connecting individual cases of elimination to broader patterns of institutional control that extended far beyond any single court or kingdom. The next investigation will reveal how these same elimination protocols were adapted and refined for deployment against subsequent royal targets, whose sexual identity continued to threaten the fundamental legitimacy of dynastic authority.